The number of fans we could host in Ohio Stadium this fall under physical distance guidelines could be as low as 22,000, but also maybe as many as 40 to 50,000 if guidelines are relaxed. So as I bring ESPN's college football reporter Heather Dinich into the conversation, it seems, Heather, Gene Smith had two different things to say on the same day, which should give everyone an indication of just how complicated all of this stuff is. So let's get to the bottom of it. Ohio State is going to consider allowing players to return June 8th and allowing up to 50,000 fans. That's where he sort of netted out there. What are you hearing about how they will be able to make that safe for everybody?
Well, he had much clearer direction as to how it will be safe at this point in time for the student athletes. He said that they will have to sign up before they enter the facilities, which will be limited. Not everything is going to be open. About 9 or 10 players will be allowed in at one time. They'll have to have a temperature check, go through some screening before they are allowed in. Those players will exit. There will be a thorough clean down of whatever they use, and then the next batch of players will be coming in. He's hoping to get in about 50 athletes a day. Remember, it's voluntary. The coaches can't make them, and they can't watch them.
Yeah, which is part of the usual off-season process, although there's been nothing usual about this off-season process. Now, I strongly recommend the article that you posted yesterday because you talked to, it seemed, everybody about how college football is trying to implement testing after you talked with, among others, the Power 5 commissioners. What is the biggest issue they're facing right now regarding that?
Well, it starts with cost and feasibility. Dr. Brian Hainline, the NCAA's chief medical officer, told me as of today, the costs run between $100 and $150. But the one question that nobody seems to have a concrete answer for at this point is what happens if a student athlete or a coach tests positive. Jeremiah Donati, the TCU athletic director, told me absolutely quarantine for 14 days. He asked his coach, Gary Patterson, what happens if you get sick? And he said, I got that emoji where the brain explodes looking back at me. So this is a real conversation, and a lot of people, most people I talk to, aren't sure what the answer is to that.
I get it. So what does that mean? As we sit here today, should college football fans be expecting there to be games 100 days from now?
That's a really difficult question, and I'm not trying to skirt it, but every single Power 5 commissioner that I've talked to has said we're going to be ready to go for the fall, but we are also planning for the possibility that there's no football season. So there still aren't answers. Remember, the SEC right now, the athletic directors today are going to meet in that conference with their health officials to see if the SEC is going to open up for voluntary workouts, just like Ohio State. They're going to make a recommendation to the university presidents and chancellors who will meet tomorrow. So we're still in the baby steps phase of all this. Maybe we'll see college football. I think if they can play, they will play. And I know that all of those commissioners are talking every single day to try and figure out how.
It's not the AD's decision here. It's not the coach's decision. It's not even these medical officials that will be making the decision. Ultimately, it comes down to the presidents. And while I expect the SEC to vote yes, the majority of the teams and the universities to vote yes, I do think there will be some that don't. And there are some disagreements at the top as of earlier this week that I heard about. So some of that may change, maybe worked out today and over the next couple of days, but I think it'll be unique to see if there's a president that maybe votes one way and his coach and AD don't agree with that, and how all of that shakes out. Either way, I think that we are barreling toward a reopening, and there's still a lot left to be figured out.
Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they're going to reopen, and there may be disagreements, but ultimately in college football, Greeny, the presidents rule. They are the final arbiter. And I think the interesting thing I heard from Heather was voluntary workouts. Can you imagine a college football player saying to his coach, nah, I'm not showing up? They're all going to show up. It's farcical to act like this isn't mandatory. It's voluntary for a reason, but they'll all be there.
Well, let's dive in on that for just a minute, Paul. We touched on it yesterday and didn't really have time to do it. Under normal circumstances, I would say, yes, I get that. That makes all the sense in the world. The college football coaches have all of this power they wield over kids. But if I'm a student athlete who is playing football and doesn't really think I'm going to the National Football League someday, I'm there because this is my opportunity to go to college, and I'm worried about getting the coronavirus, I may very well not show up for this stuff right now. Do you think that coaches and the schools will take these kids' scholarships away? Paul, I'll start with you.
No, I don't, because it would just be such a blot on them, a black eye. This is going to be one of the first major tests. We talked a minute ago about the testing later, the opening of the stadiums, but this is an incremental progression here, Greeny. And if you start seeing defections now, it's going to be a harbinger of things to come. So it's critical to watch and see if everyone shows up, or if you have the outlier parent saying, no way, I'm not letting my son go.
What then happens? Laura, I know that most of the players, if not all, that you've talked to say they want to come back. But in the event that there are some, either the kids themselves or the families that don't want them to go back, then what happens?
Yeah, look, here's the thing. The people that I've talked to, and I've talked to a wide variety of them, have all said, I want to be there. I want to play. I can't wait to get back and work out with my team and, you know, follow the guidelines to the best of my ability. But I know that there are some out there that exist that aren't comfortable with this, and maybe some families, some parents that exist that are not comfortable with this. And so I do think at that point it becomes kind of what Paul said. How are they going to handle it along the lines of making sure that they do still honor these scholarships? They're going to have to do that. I don't think there's any other option. What gets really, really complicated, and we have brought this up before on the show, I know it continues to be discussed, is if you see a state or a school that is not able to open up on time or able to get things going on time in order to really compete with the rest of the college football or the rest of their conference in the season. Do we see transfers? Do we see things like that happening? That's where there could be some loopholes in these scholarships that become incredibly complicated to manage.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.